So will helmets become required equipment for Minnesota motorcyclists? Well, a bill was introduced earlier this year that would require that they wear helmets or face stiffer insurance costs. But is it fair? Heidi Collins spoke with two gentlemen earlier this week to hear both sides of the debate.
It's a bill that just can't seem to pass in this state, despite the staggering statistics that prove wearing a helmet on a motorcycle can save your life. In Minnesota, the law does not require motorcyclists to wear a helmet. And a new study says it's costing you a lot of money. Joining us to talk more about this issue, Jeff Nachbar. He's the Public Policy Director for the Minnesota Brain Injury Alliance, and Frank Ernst with American Bikers for Awareness, Training, and Education of Minnesota. Thanks, gentlemen, to both of you for being here. Frank, I'll start with you. Give us the reasons that you don't want to be wearing a helmet on your motorcycle, other than you believe it's your right to ride without one.
Well, of course, that reason, but we also believe that there's some advantages sometimes in visibility and maneuverability, and there's opportunities. We don't necessarily say not to wear a helmet. We like the choice. I often wear a helmet when I ride my motorcycle, depending on the circumstances. So we're not anti-helmet, we're anti-helmet law.
Understood. So sometimes you choose to wear one, you just want the choice, is what you're saying. So Jeff, what's wrong with that?
Nothing's wrong with that. In fact, I think it's really important to understand that this issue is not about interfering with people's right to make that choice. It is not a mandatory helmet law. What it is it's a law that requires that those that make that choice take financial and personal responsibility for the consequences of that decision. Okay. And that's what our study looked at. Okay,
very good. In fact, the Brain Injury Alliance released this new study that essentially says between the years of 2001 and 2010, motorcycle crashes apparently cost taxpayers, this would be involving those who ended up with some sort of traumatic brain injury or TBI, upwards of $40 million in crash-related hospital costs in Minnesota. Frank, what do you say to that?
Well, that's kind of interesting because during that same time period, 2001 to 2010, the Center for Disease Control has estimated that your possibilities of having a brain injury as a result of a slip and fall are 2 times as great as they are in a motor vehicle accident.
Okay, so who should pay for that?
Well, we aren't asking all the pedestrians to wear a helmet.
No, of course not. But if there is a possibility of wearing a helmet on a vehicle like a motorcycle, and that helps not only helps the motorcyclist to stay safer and also helps the taxpayer with unaffordable hospital costs, is that something that seems somewhat reasonable?
Well, I'm not sure that it does. I mean, you have a risk of injury in just about anything that you do, and to put catastrophic insurance, for example, for a person that doesn't eat healthy, to say that in order to go buy a piece of unhealthy food, you pay more in insurance. Where does it end?
But what we're asking folks to do is to understand that the consequence of that decision extends beyond the individual just making it that's riding their motorcycle. It extends to the taxpayer, it extends to their family. There's a whole host of costs that are associated with it. And the question is, who pays for that? And so this is not about taking away anybody's rights, taking away anybody's freedoms. It's simply saying, where is the financial responsibility for covering these costs?
So I guess what the question really is why should someone else have to pay for that when you have the opportunity to lower that risk?
When we looked at the data, when we took a closer look at who's paying, who isn't paying, it's important to remember that we're simply talking about the hospital and the injury-related costs here of $40 million. It does not count the lifetime and the care that many people with traumatic brain injury need to undertake, and who's paying for that. We understand that motorcyclists may not want to pay the extra costs. We understand that they may not want to take that responsibility themselves, but the argument that they shouldn't have to take responsibility for that decision because other people aren't taking responsibility for their decisions, we just don't think that flies in the public policy debate, and we really hope that people can come to an agreement on the responsibility for covering some of these costs.
Frank, I'll give you the last word then.
Well, I think that we'd find that most motorcyclists are insured, and like anybody else, occasionally they're not insured to the extent of the total costs. Once again, why just motorcyclists? If this is something that everybody needs to take responsibility for, why don't we target all groups? That would be my question.
All right, to the both of you. Jeff Nachbar, Public Policy Director for the Minnesota Brain Injury Alliance, and Frank Ernst with American Bikers for Awareness, Training, and Education of Minnesota. Appreciate the discussion, gentlemen. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.